you always sit with your buttocks on 2 chairs. Puzzling to this very day because it's so huge. And I was like, really? Do you believe in those fake divisions? It honestly boils my blood and I need to calm myself down. I don't know, the way I made it. The only place that beat it was Vietnam. That's just crazy. I'm not my mom and dad. I already have my mom and dad. So that's a bit of a mental exercise. That's something that England really nailed. If I want to be in the UK, I need to be more softer. Personally, I would just abolish it. I feel that before we even start, I need to say this. It's my opinion, it's my experience of mainly England, not the whole of UK. England is part of the UK, so I say it's the UK, but it's mainly England, and it's not the ultimate truth. So please don't take this video and whatever I say too seriously. There, I've said it. Hey everybody, I'm Marta and I've lived in the UK for over 19 years now. I moved here because of the need for a change and possibly adventure. I lived in Poland, where I was born, but just came back from a year in Denmark, which I really loved. And my friends who lived in the UK encouraged me to come to London and experience and see what it's like. So in this video, I'd like to talk about my initial expectations and reality, and then culture shocks and things like disappointments, regrets, but also what I really enjoy about living in the UK. And finally, I'm going to answer the big question, would I move here again? Ciao Alberto!
Ciao Marta, what's up?
How's Immersive Trips doing?
Doing alright, I think. More subscribers every day.
Fantastic! Just a quick one, you use Wise for transferring money to Bella Italia, right? I have a referral link that will let you send 1 transfer for free. Do you want it?
Of course, I use Wise all the time. It's the best.
Right? So simple and effective. Anyway, I just wanted to check if you knew about Wise Interest.
What's that?
It's like an account, but it pays interest on your money. So, because it's Wise, it's better.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Is it safe?
They invest your money in a low-risk fund that's 100% backed by government. So I'd say that's very safe.
Unless Rishi prove us wrong.
Yeah, well, we'd have bigger problems when that happens. That fund follows central bank interest rates, so when they change, your interest rate also changes. So it's not like a fixed, guaranteed amount, but all things considered, it sounds like a pretty decent option to make some income.
It sounds like something I'd use actually.
Okay, I need to go now, but if you want to use Wise Interest, I'll send you my referral link. It will give you some perks.
Alright, cool. I'll use it. Thanks, Marta.
No problem, Albertini. Speak soon and post more on Immersive Trips.
Sure thing, I'll do my best. Ciao.
Ciao! My idea of England before coming here was of a very dull and rainy country. When I was learning English back in Poland, as a teenager, I had this Scottish teacher, and once he gave us an exercise asking us to describe a place where we'd like to move to. And I talked about Amsterdam because I really wanted to move to the Netherlands. I actually never wanted to come here. Every time I chose places to go on holidays when I was a teenager, they were not England. First, it was far too expensive, and the only thing in the brochure was usually London. And yes, it was a city, and that's the last thing I wanted on my holiday because I lived in a city anyway. So I never visited England or London before moving here, which is probably really unwise. I must say there haven't been too many culture shocks, despite me coming from what's considered Eastern Europe, but in fact is Central Europe. Probably the biggest culture shock for me was the ready meal section at the supermarket. And that is something that I really find puzzling to this very day because it's so huge. I know that maybe compared to America it's not that big, but compared to Poland it's absolutely massive. The frozen ready meals, the fresh ready meals, they're just so prevalent here. And because there's so many of them, it makes me believe that people actually live on ready meals, which I find absolutely mind-blowing. So that's the biggest culture shock. Another thing that I found really surprising, but in a very positive way, was that I was able to cross the street anywhere I wanted to. Like in Poland, I paid tickets for crossing the street in inappropriate places. I had police cars actually going and making a U-turn to give me a ticket. So that was just something I was used to, and I was always aware of police cars being around. And in the UK, when I came here and I started crossing the streets, I had policemen just standing next to me and crossing on red light, or just crossing in places where there was absolutely zero pedestrian crossing, and I found it great. I think in hindsight, I grew up with a very touristy idea of England. So royalty, stiff upper lip, politeness, manners, lots of rain. I honestly expected rain every single day, 365 days in the year. Oh yeah, and also fog. Let's not forget about fog, thanks to Mr. Charles Dickens and Arthur Conan Doyle. In reality, it doesn't really rain that much, and the weather is quite pleasant and very mild. The seasons are very well pronounced, maybe apart from winter, which is much colder in Poland. What I really didn't expect was the dampness and humidity. Lots of people have problems with mold in their flats and stuff like that. That's something unheard of in Poland. When it comes to people and stiff upper lip and politeness and formality, I find people very, very polite and well-mannered. And I think it took me a while not to confuse politeness with friendliness. People are definitely polite, but that doesn't mean they're friendly. The English, in my experience, they have a really hard outer shell, and it's really hard to get through that shell to actually make friends with them. Nothing wrong with that. This is how it is. This is my experience of the English people. When it comes to royalty, nobody really gives a hoot about royalty. I think the last time that somebody talked to me about royalty was some strange guy. We were walking down the street with my boyfriend Adam, and it was the day of the Queen's funeral. And this guy started walking beside us, and he just kind of followed us, and he was just talking about the whole royal family, and he was going back generation or two and talking about the next generations and the kids and how old they were and all that stuff that we had no clue about. And I was the only person I actually can recall saying anything about royalty, royal family. Other than that, I think the only person who mentioned royalty is my friend Alberto, who actually looks like Prince Harry, and he just took this photo and sent it to me, and we just laughed. So to me, royalty is not a big deal, but I live in London. I don't live in, I don't know, Kent or Surrey. And I know that in other parts of England, things like bank holidays and royal celebrations are really celebrated. But maybe I meet the wrong people. Nobody gives a damn about royalty among the people I know. But something that everybody does do and everybody respects and knows is queuing. Oh my God, queuing in England, that's a huge thing. If I see somebody skipping a queue, it honestly boils my blood and I need to calm myself down. That's a sign that I truly integrated. The biggest difference between England and Poland is driving on the other side of the road. It doesn't affect me because I don't really drive, but sometimes when I travel in a car, you know, in the passenger seat, I get confused, especially when I go back home and I really don't know which side I need to enter from. So that's a bit of a mental exercise. Another thing is the imperial system of measurements. Oh my God, and I still don't get it. The only thing I kind of remember is that 6 feet is about 2 meters. And the only reason I remember is because of that show, 6 feet under. I know that a coffin is more or less 2 meters below the ground. So that's how I remember. But anything other than that, when I use Google Maps and I want to get somewhere, I need to change the settings to make sure that I don't hear about yards, because I have no clue how long a yard is. I have no clue why the system is still in place. Personally, I would just abolish it. Another main difference I would say is between paracetamol and antibiotics. So if you go to a GP in the UK, so that's general practitioner, and it's like a family doctor of sorts, 99% of problems you have will be treated with paracetamol. I kid you not. All my friends laugh about the same thing. If you go with a headache, paracetamol. If you go with a foot ache, paracetamol. If you go with depression, probably paracetamol. On the flip side, in Poland, people really freely will prescribe you antibiotics. And in the UK, antibiotics are seen as the last resort. Very rightly so, because they really do a lot of damage to your body while healing one thing. So they should be seen as the last resort. In Poland, they just prescribe freely, and many people, many Poles who live here, they just get lots of prescriptions of antibiotics because they know they're not going to get them so easily here. I've never done it, but yeah, this is a common practice among Polish migrants. They just get antibiotics from Poland and they just smuggle them in. Another huge difference, I think, is in the way people socialize in the UK and in Poland. In Poland, it's very common to be invited to somebody's house for coffee or tea and cake, and it's just common practice. It used to be hugely popular. Now people are more busy, so not as much, but it's still there. My sister always calls me and she says, oh, I went to see my cousin, of course, in her place, and then somebody visited for a barbecue, and then somebody visited just for tea. And this is something I feel that really doesn't work in the UK. You know, Englishman's house is his castle, and it's true. It really is. Like, people, if they invite you over to their place, that's a big deal, I think. It's either a dinner party or something already arranged. There's nothing like unplanned or spontaneous or like short visits. People hardly ever do that here. Public spaces like pubs or restaurants, eating out, that's huge here, but not as much in Poland. In Poland, it's more socializing at home. Don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. And another huge difference that I would say exists is between the way people communicate. Polish people are very often very straightforward, and we're very blunt. And that is very often seen as either rude or possibly even aggressive. Whereas in England, people are much more polite, much more reserved. So the English could see that bluntness and being straightforward as being rude, whereas the Poles see that politeness and not ever saying in your face what you think as lack of honesty, so as fake. And that's very, very much present in both national concepts, I think. I don't know if they're true, but very often that's how people read each other. Even in my last contract, I was told by the product manager that I need to be a bit more softer. And yeah, the story of my life, I need to be more softer. If I want to be in the UK, I need to be more softer. Whereas in Poland, it would not be probably something that is even noticed. I never had that feedback from anybody. I think after 19 years here, maybe in Poland, I'm seen as really soft and I really need to toughen up. So there you go, you always sit with your buttocks on 2 chairs. Okay, something that I really, really like in English culture is the lack of titles in everyday use. So let's say that in Poland, I got married and my husband's parents would become my parents by proxy. In-laws, okay, they're in-laws, there is a name for it, but I would have to address them as per mom and dad. That's just crazy. I'm not my mom and dad, I already have my mom and dad. So when I started dating my boyfriend here, I kept asking him, how should I address your mom? In Poland, I would have to address her per Mrs. or, you know, per Madam. Whereas here, I just call her by her name and it's just so easy and so convenient. It's like a ready meal of everyday conversation and everyday interaction, and I absolutely love it. Another thing that I really appreciate pretty much daily is something that maybe is more present for the English people, especially if you're into politics or current affairs. But if I lived in Poland now, I would be much more affected by the church, so religion, and also politics, the government. In the UK, it really is ignorable. And I know that many people could disagree with that, but coming from a place where it's so dominating and so ever-present and so even controlling, you honestly start to feel the difference almost immediately. My biggest regret, by far, is Brexit. I really regret that the UK is not part of the European Union anymore. I'm a British citizen and I'm a Polish citizen, so I have both passports, although my Polish one actually expired and I didn't bother to renew it. So yeah, that's a good reminder. But I'll tell you why in a second. And you know what? It doesn't even matter if I just think about it from my personal perspective or a bigger perspective. I truly regret that Brexit ever happened. I think I slightly regret not having lived in places other than London in the UK. I think that there are amazing places in England, in Scotland and in Wales, and it would have been great to actually experience living there, not just in London. And another thing I want to mention here is definitely lack of part-time work culture. Part-time work is something that you can negotiate after years of full-time work, but when you look at adverts when it comes to part-time work, there's not many, and if there are any, they're usually menial jobs or not careers, if you like. There is no easy way, for example, for parents, I feel, and from what I see when I observe my friends who have kids, to support a family unit and to actually make it possible to have this balance between your career and between your personal life. I don't think this is celebrated in England, and I think that is something that I find really regretful. Okay, let's mention charity shops. Charity shops are absolutely brilliant. I never experienced charity shops in Poland. Maybe they're there now, but when I lived there, they didn't exist. And here, they're just everywhere, and they're brilliant. And they just combine this human need to spend with the human joy of giving so brilliantly and so effortlessly. I love charity shops. That's something that England really nailed. Of course, right after music. Music is ingenious here. I love British music. I love British musicians. Some of my most beloved musicians happen to be British. So yeah, music is something I definitely appreciate here. I think the whole tax system is made for humans here, and it's very easy to understand. When I wanted to do my taxes in Poland, I needed an accountant because I couldn't understand the papers. And the papers were just very formal, badly designed, and I think they like that to this very day. Whereas here, it takes me half an hour to do my tax return. And it's the same with starting and support for small businesses. My sister runs a business in Poland and I run a business here. And the struggles we have, the experience of the government and the paperwork here, well, I must say that it's much, much, much easier here. To give you an example, remember how a second ago I told you that my Polish passport expired. So one of the reasons why I didn't renew it is this website. This is the website I need to use to actually renew my passport, and just looking at it gives me a headache. It's so badly designed. So things like that are something that definitely puts me off and I'm used to from Poland, but are so different and so much better here. My biggest disappointment when it comes to living here is the littering and fly tipping. Oh my god, littering and fly tipping in England and possibly the whole of UK, that's madness. The only place that beat it was Vietnam. When I traveled in Vietnam, that was a huge problem. I'm definitely with David Sedaris on this one. He's one of my favorite writers and he lives in West Sussex and he just gets infuriated with the litter around him. So he goes litter picking with a litter picker and he does so much of it that he even says that it's visible where he ends litter picking and where the rest of England starts. But on top of that, his local council named a rubbish truck after his name. I'm glad to know that this is not only my biggest disappointment. Another thing that I'm definitely disappointed with is classicism. I wasn't aware of it that much, but of course it exists. It's such a deeply ingrained idea here. Yeah, I was making tea at work and my boss said, oh, this is so working class. I don't know, the way I made it. And I was like, really? Do you believe in those fake divisions? But people do. They're really, really strong here. Classicism is big in the UK. I thought that as a modern and developed country and innovative culture, they would kind of forget about them or move on from that ancient idea of class. But no, it's very much alive and kicking. You know, after over 19 years, the challenges become very much crystal clear. You know exactly what you've been struggling with. The top one would be sub-British language. I call it sub-British language because what people say and what they mean is very often completely different in England. In England, you'll get the person who will say, hey, how are you? And they will just walk right past you because they really just say, hello, I acknowledge you, you're there. It's a greeting. In Poland, if you say, hey, how are you? You actually mean what you say and you actually are prepared to hear whatever this person has to say about their life. It's not just, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. You're prepared to enter the unknown territory of a conversation. You don't know what's going to happen. And it could be very personal stuff. Whereas in England, nothing like that. There are plenty of memes explaining what the English person says and what they actually mean. So it's nothing that is just in my head. Especially if you work in an office, you will need to learn this sub-British English. Yeah, and you have to get used to it. I found it really challenging. Now I just know that if somebody says to me, hey, we need to catch up, I know they mean absolutely nothing. And the other challenge that I think is very clear to me after all this time is cities. They are very much car-centric cities and high streets look the same in most places. You get chain restaurants, chain of shops, and everything is franchised and looks very similar. I'm not saying that the whole of England is like that, I'm not saying that the whole of UK is like that, but a huge part is like that. In Poland, if you live in a bigger city or town, there will be a market square. So it's like the equivalent of Italian plaza. So a meeting place where people just watch other people, but also interact, have a beer, I don't know, have a dinner and just spend time there. In England, there is a high street, and the high street is still car-centric. There's not many areas that are pedestrianized. And this whole car-centric approach is something that I've been struggling with for a long time. People are trying to change it and make it more cycle-friendly and more pedestrianized, but I think there's a huge way to go in England. I'm not saying that it's amazing in Poland, it's not, but at least that meeting space is more clearly defined and actually lends itself much more to becoming pedestrianized quicker. So the biggest question, would I move here again? Yes, I would definitely move here again. Knowing all that I already know, I would definitely move to the UK because it's a great country. And would I stay here for that long? I don't know, probably, unless somebody gave me a chance to live in the Netherlands. So any Dutch people with your amazing architecture and cycling culture who are watching this video and are ready for me to move there and would like to make it possible, please email me at movehere@martalees.com and I'll be forever grateful. Just kidding, this address doesn't exist. And that's it for now. I've said everything I had to say. If you have any questions and if you have any comments, please make sure you leave them right under this video. Other than that, thanks very much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.